Daniel, it's really great to connect. Where am I finding you?
I'm here in Seattle.
Did you grow up there originally?
No, I grew up a little bit of everywhere. My dad is a civil engineer, only worked on big power plant type projects, and those aren't all in one place. So moved around the American West and the Northeast. I was born in New York, but I'm a Red Sox fan. So if you want to add all that up.
Interesting. Okay, I already have like five questions out of this. So, okay, let me start here though. So, um, who is your childhood hero without saying your parents? Like, did you have a sports hero growing up?
Uh, I I think the earliest here I can remember was a swim coach that I had. So I don't know if that's my only childhood hero, but I do remember really idolizing this great swim coach, probably someone half my age now, but someone who's much older than me then, and I was maybe 6 years old and competitively swimming and getting up before school uh, and heading to the pool, and I just learned a ton from this young man, and he was my hero for sure. We were a great little scrappy team from Northwest New Mexico and sort of like Bad News Bears of some desert town. And
That's awesome.
he was just a great guy. Learned a ton from him.
Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think it was about like him that you admired or respected?
Yeah, I mean, what I remember was just the motivating feeling and sort of the expertise. I think those are the two things that cut through. I won't make a corny thread about how influential that was on me, but I do think those are the two things that I recall. I just remember wanting to be successful
Yeah,
uh, and working with him and the team that we were with and my friends, of course, because I was just a little dude.
yeah.
It was fun.
That's awesome. I got to coach my son's baseball team last year, and I come to appreciate the people who work with young kids, and they make it look, many people make it look easy, but I feel like it's an art
It's
in
so
itself.
hard. And for
Yeah.
those of us that are always working on patience, you manifest this unbelievable patience and bite your tongue a lot. But it's super
Yeah.
rewarding, of course.
Did you have a baseball hero growing up?
I mean, when I lived in Boston for quite some time after going to school there, Pedro Martinez, was a pitcher that put the whole Red Sox team on his back. So a little bit later in my baseball watching career, but huge, huge hero.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a big Nolan Ryan fan when it comes
Oh
to
yeah.
the pitchers.
Have you seen the documentary Fastball? I won't give it away for your listeners in case this clip makes it, but you
I
should watch it
don't
if you
think I've
haven't.
seen it.
I won't say whether or not Nolan Ryan was to have pitched the fastest pitch of all time. I won't say so, but he's in there. He's featured at length.
Okay, I saw, is it Facing Nolan or Chasing Nolan,
Yeah,
which might have been on Prime. Is fastball, is it pretty much everywhere or?
it's about. I'm not sure which service it's on right now,
Okay.
but it's sort of trying to figure out, including of pitchers that threw before we had modern measurement techniques,
Yes.
who ever threw the fastest.
Okay.
There's one
Interesting.
pitcher that they get a motorcycle going 100 and try to have him throw at the same time, before you have radar. So it's fascinating. You should check it out.
Okay. You have a mathematics background, so I imagine you were knee deep
I
into
do.
that documentary.
Yes, I would say baseball is the most statistical, dorky sport that there is. It sort of invented the idea of going deep with math, and so yeah, it's
Yeah.
just an endless set of possibilities for someone mathematically inclined.
One of my favorite sports cards, I recently kind of got back into collecting and whatnot. There's a card and it says 4,000 strikeouts on top, right? And you've got Nolan, you've got Steve Carlton, you've got Randy Johnson, and then your friend Roger Clemens is the
Yeah,
is the fourth on there.
the rocket. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so your dad was a civil engineer. I was wondering like what your parents did for a living and maybe how that impacted some of the choices that you might have made in your career.
Yeah, my mom's an accountant and spent definite time as a full-time mom too. and dad's a civil engineer, and uh, we moved around. He worked on very big projects like big power plants, the Big Dig in Boston, actually, at some point. So big, big civil engineering problems. I think my parents wandered a little bit less in their education than I did. I went off to school and sort of figured out that what I loved about science and the stuff I was doing in high school was really the mathematical part and the foundational part. So went off to graduate school and got even more arcane and studied formal logic and sort of proof theory systems and stuff that you basically can't apply anywhere except teaching other people the formal logic. So uh, just got more and more abstract, but was really interested in it. I think in part because it was the hardest things I could find to do. And I'm just inclined to take on hard analytical problems. Um, but I think also just following a little bit in my parents are both analytically inclined and love that. I wandered a bit more and got more and more abstract before coming back to some very practical things like building technology for folks.
Yeah. Interesting. The moving, uh, like, what was that like as growing up and being young? I moved when I was 10 from New Jersey to California. It was a big move. It was sort of like the one big move as a kid, but it sounds like you had to move quite often. I'm just wondering, what was that like? And then maybe in hindsight, I know some people say like, oh, it helps me sort of become more adaptable. Would you agree with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely moving events growing up. I do think, I learned to kind of walk into a room and make friends or just get to know folks, and I lean on that for sure in my current career and meeting new folks. I do think it was all very different, but the big move for me, if yours was at 10, mine was in middle school. And then my parents kind of we stuck in one place through high school. But it was tough. It's, I don't think there's anyone who would say middle school is the period in their lives they'd go back to. They'd rush back to middle school. It's not everyone's even more awkward than they feel. So I have a lot of empathy for middle school folks, and I know I had a rocky time of it, but then, of course, just like all things when you're a kid, a month or two in, everything's fine again. So
Yeah. Did you have siblings growing up?
I did. I've got a younger brother and a younger sister. They're
Okay.
both great.
What would you say from either parent's most important lesson that stands out? Maybe even something that you'd want to, I don't know if you have kids, but if you'd want to instill that lesson with them.
Yeah, I do. I've got actually I'm going to be an empty nester, so I've got three kids and they're all about to be off at college.
Wow.
And I've got one who's a sophomore at University of Washington. So my twins are seniors and about to head off to school. Um, I think my parents really prioritize just trying to be a good person. And that doesn't mean I'm successful at it, but I think it is what matters most. I remember going around to my kids' preschools and we were, you're interviewing the preschool is how you feel as a new parent and you're trying to figure out the right fit. And my consistent question, and then including when they went off to elementary and middle school and whatnot, was I would ask teachers just what their non-academic goals were for my kid. Like what kind of person do they think they're shaping, or uh, what are their goals for the people that come through their class that don't have to do with the grade? And I still think that stuff matters more to me than anything else.
What did they usually say, or what were you hoping they would say?
Well, the best places, I mean, the preschool that we ended up enrolling my kids, they sort of had me at song circle because we spent 40 minutes sitting around and someone had a guitar and they were clearly just basically teaching, having a good time. There was a place to make mud pies out in the backyard. I mean, it was just a very cool place. But they were really just teaching empathy and walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And these aren't the words they used, but really what it means to be part of a social network and society in a classroom and make it so others can learn. And I think I learned that from my parents a bit, I'm not saying I'm successful at it. I'm saying I aspire to it.
Yeah.
And I think it served my kids insofar as we prioritize that. And I think it's been a really important part of my career too. Professionally, I think it's easy to get lost in the what we do, and the how we do it matters at least as much. And it's super related to how successful we are with the what. So if you want to build a great product, I think you want to be working with great people on it, and the outcome is better. So I think it's a little bit of a thread for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about when you said just being a good person, having empathy, being honest, having integrity. Some of the things maybe we take for granted are things that need to really be instilled. So I can see that in our kids at least.
100%.
Yeah. Um, what do you think? Oh, okay. Let me back one thing. Did you have like a first job, an odd job growing up? Was it mowing lawns or anything like that? Like, what was your
Oh
first job where
man.
you got paid?
I think my first job where I got paid, well, let's see. My first job where I got paid might have been my paper route. I was like you know, up at 4 a.m. on Sundays and pedaling
Wow.
the bike. And um, I think that's probably the first job where I made serious money. That wasn't babysitting.
Yeah.
Let's call it serious money, meaning tens of dollars or something. Um, but I was loaded at the time, I'm sure. Got all the candy I wanted. And then I had a zillion odd jobs. I mean, I put myself through school, and I dug holes for a living one summer, literally. I
Tell me about
uh,
that.
was a gas station attendant making change, using my mathematical prowess to,
Yeah.
make change without a register that made change. Tell you about digging holes.
Yeah. So what was that job?
Just a construction job.
Okay.
Digging foundations for some cabins. But yeah, I think I've had every manner of job. Not always my favorite, but important to get through school and get
So
here.
you paid for your way through university through
Yeah,
those jobs?
I
Okay.
did.
That's awesome and interesting. How do you think how do you think about paying for your child's education? Do you feel like you want them to have the similar experience, or do you pay for it as, and sort of gift it to them? Have you talked about that?
Yeah, it's a tension, I think. Uh, I think we want our kids to learn from their experiences, and I learned a lot from the jobs that I had. And I think, we also want our kids to have it easier than us or do better than us, right? That's what we aspire to as parents. So it's a mix. Um, I'm excited for my kids to be successful in school, though.
Yeah, makes sense. What led you to study both philosophy, history, and math?
Well, the philosophy and math go easiest together because logic is taught in the philosophy department, math is taught in the math department. And if you're doing formal and symbolic logic,
Hmm.
you want set theory, that's in the math department. You want, proof theoretical modal logic, that's in the philosophy department. So it's just a bit of a crossover. History has just always been of interest to me. I think there's a lot to learn from history. It's also just good for writing. I like writing narratively about history. So just that one was more of just an interest.
Okay. Do you have a favorite history book that you recommend people read?
Um, I don't know that I have a favorite. The Path Between the Seas I'm working on right now, which is about the Panama Canal. I like
Ooh.
maybe it's being the son of a civil engineer, great feats of engineering that seem before their time. The building of the Brooklyn Bridge is a wildly audacious thing to have done, starting in, just after the Civil War. The Path Between the Seas, you're going to dig a canal across, you know, connecting two bodies of water across this huge isthmus. Um, it's super audacious to imagine doing that in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So books like that, I think.
Okay. How would you describe, I know you mentioned like you went in different directions with your career early on, but how do you describe sort of the first 10 years in that experience?
Well, I after I graduated college, I got very interested. I was a tutor, frequent tutor of math and physics and some other things that sort of go with the degrees I was pursuing. And I got really into the idea of educational technology and building a curriculum. And so I met a few guys that were working on a startup size company, basically, uh, in educational services and building educational technology. And the state of the art at the time, this is in like, just as the internet is getting big, was you put a CD in the back of a book, and that's the electronic book version of something. Early websites and ebooks that go along with books, and then the idea that technology could help you learn better and faster. So ideas like computer adaptive testing, really honing in on what you know and what you don't know. This is the approach, by the way, that sort of the GMAT or the SAT or the LSAT or any standardized test now takes a computer adaptive approach. It's a shorter test, hones in on what you know and don't know. You get a slightly different test than anyone else does because of how you show up in, the preceding question governs the next question. So, but these techniques were sort of new and being invented. And so I got really intrigued by the idea of using technology to teach. And so I was with these partners and we scaled this, company to, I can't remember what our, record top line was, but into the tens of millions of dollars uh, and building our own products. And it was fun. It was a great time.
Okay, interesting. Um, who would you say thus far has been the most influential person in your career?
Um, I've had a couple of amazing bosses and partners. I would say the brothers that I worked with that startup effort on were hugely influential, in my career. Educational technology is what brought me to Amazon ultimately and working on Kindle.
Ah,
So that was that's really the connection to my career here at Amazon. Um, and then I think I've, pretty continuously pulled on the thread of just learning new things and inventing new experiences here. But those partners are amazing guys and they were great to work with. I've had some great bosses here at Amazon, including my current boss, Panos Panay, and Dave Limp before him, who I've, each of them I've learned so much from. So at least that set of people, I'm sure I could go on and on. I've learned so much from so many folks.
yeah, I think we're, kind of alluding to this earlier, like who you work for is so important. You hear the like your boss can make you or break you, your career in a sense, right?
Yeah, and those are, that's the very crisp reality of it, make you or break you, but also just make every day, positive, negative, or somewhere in between, right? That's the person with the most to say about that. So it matters a lot as people are thinking
Yeah.
through what they want to do and where they want to be.
How did you, so you mentioned the leap from really sort of the technology to teach people over to sort of the Kindle product. Like how did you make that transition at that time? I'm thinking this is like 2009. Amazon isn't what it is today, but how did you get that job?
Well, Amazon called at the right time. The startup that we were working on, we were either raising money, flipping the company, or just continuing organically on a slightly different trajectory. It was the 2008 was the financial crisis. I had just had twins on top of an 18-month-old singleton, so three kids at home. Um, the financial crisis hit real estate hardest to remind us all. Maybe some of your listeners weren't around or doing much then. We're in elementary school. I don't know, but that's what started it was this real estate crunch. And educational funding is largely discretionary funding, at least, which places use for technology purchasing comes out of real estate taxes. And so if you could have been a realtor, that would have been the worst job to have. You could have been working on educational technology. That was a very tough segment to be in. It's sort of adjacent to being a realtor because the budget's just completely dried up. I was the COO at the time. I think we laid off a couple hundred people out of maybe a company that was 250. So over
Wow.
18 months, reset, new money, new charter, helped us accelerate some growth. You know, a lot of these things, you're really just trying to make the best of a tough situation. So we recentered on our own products, and ultimately the company sold on the basis of its own products, not its services. But
And you're in Boston at this point,
in
or
Boston,
okay.
yep, in Boston, new family, and you know, Amazon called. And I think it was, you know, making the leap to Amazon was sort of taking some risk off the table, but putting different risk on the table. So, and probably the biggest risk I've taken was coming to work at Amazon. It was leaving a, you know, top management position at a startup size company, but I took an individual contributor job at Amazon. So not in management, not a team at this point, but betting on, I think, Amazon's growth, but in particular, betting on Amazon's culture and what at the time was called the Kindle division. Now it's devices and services because we're in many different consumer electronics, including what I work on now, which is Alexa and Echo products. But at the time, it was Kindle, and I remember the thing that really hooked me was a call with the recruiter once they were, you know, trying to work out an offer that we could agree on, and get me interested. The Kindle for iPhone app had come out, and they were working on a $379 Kindle. That was what was going to change reading, was this $379 device. Uh, but then the iPhone app was free. And I was like, what are you doing exactly now? I'm not sure the strategy, because are you going to sell any of this purpose-built reading device? And the answer was so intriguing, and it completely changed my view of the opportunity, because the recruiter was like, no, Daniel, we're changing reading. We're not trying to be a consumer electronics company per se. We want to change the way everyone reads. I was like, oh wow, okay. Now I think I get it. You know, I reflected on that, and the opportunity then seemed so big to me, because changing the way people learn, which is what I came to kind of like optimize Kindle books and selection for educational contexts, uh, could be changed, and which was the mission that I wanted to be on.
Where was the Kindle? Was it like in its infancy before you got there? Was there like sort of V1? I forgot.
Yeah,
I have one, but
there
yeah.
had been one
Okay.
generation of hardware, I think, when I showed up. Basically, it was 2007. The next generation was just coming out. Kindles at the time had a keyboard. Uh,
Okay.
the
Wow, I
screen,
didn't remember that.
it wasn't a touch screen yet. It was like physical page turn buttons, but the audacity of the mission and vision, I think, and the just the think big of it and seeing what Amazon wanted to do, I think that's what got me.
When you think about your personal board of directors, maybe your spouse, your friends, what were they telling you about the opportunity?
I mean, we were basically going off the edge of the earth because we're moving off the East Coast, and I had no family out here at the time. So I think people were worried. Uh, and you know, Amazon at the time and still today is, you know, it's first known to people as the everything store.
Yeah.
And it does amazing things, you know. Now in 22 minutes or something, I can get just about anything I want, right, you know, on the app. But it wasn't yet known as, hey, this is a hub for consumer electronics or other kinds of experiences per se. AWS was known in some corners, of course. In the startup land, I knew everything about AWS, but many other people didn't. So for them, it was the store. So I think
Yeah.
explaining, um, really that, you know, Amazon's philosophy is that if you can do something special and differentiated for a customer, it's something worth doing and investing in and taking a big swing at, I think is the main thing I was trying to relate to folks. I got plenty of quizzes about why I would be moving across the country with three little kids. Uh,
Yes.
so
Did you have, and I think this is hugely important. Did you have family help support where you were? And then obviously, like what a critical age, right, to have that type of support.
yeah. Oh, yeah. My parents were in Boston and family up and down the East Coast. So we had a lot of support with our three kids, and so we were leaving a bunch of that behind. You get different kind of support remotely, of course, but it's harder to bring in the load of diapers that we were going through on a weekly basis.
How hard was that as a young dad. I mean, earlier you told me like they're going off to college and whatnot, and they're seniors, but when you think about that time and we might make a move, and our kids they just turned 9 and 11, so um, we did a move when they were one and no, we did a move, yeah, when they were 1 and 3, we did a big move. And so I remember that, but like moving to the other side of the country, we went from like no support to no support, but to having the support and going to no support, how was that just as a dad?
I mean, I think it was a challenge, but um, I think we went in eyes wide open
Yeah.
that was the big change. The stability of Amazon versus the startup, life we were living was also a big part of that. So it's a different kind of keel in the boat, so to speak, but certainly more stable than me running around with my partners trying to raise money and whatnot. The life of anyone operating at a senior level at a startup knows that, you're juggling zillions of hats and it's not always continuous in terms of the finances. So I think different kind of keel in that respect. But yeah, I mean, a lot of support change for sure. New family here at Amazon, which was great. Um, and I think we were on a great mission.
Yeah. How would you describe when you look at just your resume at Amazon? It's like this growth trajectory, which is great to see. But what do you think has been maybe the sort of, not like this secret to the success, but if you were to give some guidance to someone growing within an organization, like you've done
Mhm.
that, navigated a pretty large organization at this time. I imagine, from I don't know the employee count off the top, but like from 2009 to 2026, talk about growth in different segments, whether it's like, you know, just AWS or other areas of the organization. What do you think has been some of the key points to your career growth? What advice would you give somebody?
I mean, I think cultural affinity was the thing that I've already flagged. Because I love that original mission that I seized on with Kindle, and it's the mission the team is still on. We're incredibly consistent over time. Transform reading, every book ever written anywhere in the world in 60 seconds or less. That's the promise of the Kindle experience. It's still one of my favorite devices to use. It's how I read most of my books, and I'm an avid reader where I have the time. Uh, I think so. I think that matters a lot. I think finding, a company culture that you believe in and, they're on the mission that you're on, so to speak. I think
Okay.
one of the things that mattered a lot to me about Amazon was that I don't think we used the words at the time, but I think, Andy might have used it in a recent shareholder letter, aspiring to be the world's biggest startup, being a startup guy, coming to a place where there was just as much focus on invention, really obsessing about a customer like in a deep way, thinking about each and every number on a spreadsheet as a person that's the person you're uniquely serving. So I think the culture there that's very startup like and hard for big companies to preserve, but we do still take it so seriously at Amazon. Um, the risk taking, I think uh, because you get to do a lot of that in a startup, and I think we aspire to that in our culture at Amazon. So I think I had a cultural connection with what I thought Amazon wanted. Growth mattered a lot to me, so finding a place that's growing. Um, you want to be part of external trends and driving trends in terms of growth. If you're looking for a place growing, some people want something steady and you know a little more straightforward, so to speak, in terms of risk taking. So that's fine. You just want to, I think, calibrate and understand what the environment is like. It mattered a lot to me to want to take big swings, especially coming out of a startup, wanting to continue that part, but maybe take a little bit less risk, personal risk with it. Um, and I think understanding pretty quickly that it wasn't, we were starting a capability for the company at Amazon. That's what Kindle
Mm.
did. And moving very quickly, some of our most senior leaders, Jeff and, you know, some early leaders of Kindle, Ian Freed and others, but some of these leaders that established the brand and the device saw very early on that we should be doing more things in consumer electronics, and that became all kinds of successes. A couple missed the ball a couple times too, or maybe experimented with something that we didn't continue doing, but have also just put up some other huge successes. I'm proud to lead another one that came out of that era in inventing Echo hardware and Alexa, um, which was, just another audacious bet, basically. So knowing that we were on this path of continuing bets, I think mattered a lot to me. So I do think it's possible to make sure as part of the looking around process or interview process or getting to know a company process, whatever that all adds up to look for those kind of things that line up with really, really studying yourself and knowing what you're looking for.
Yeah, you talked about calculating the risk, but also like what risks are the company that you're interviewing for willing to take. I had a conversation with Jamie Siminoff
Yeah.
a little while back. Yeah, all
I work
things ring.
closely with Jamie. Yeah. I get to
Okay.
see him all the time.
And so just something he said to me that really stood out is we talked about learning from failure, which I'd love to hear your perspective on, right? You hear this, the whole like fail fast sort of thing in the startup world, but I don't think we celebrate the failure as much, right? We celebrate the successes. And if you think about that moment where he was on Shark Tank, right? That was not even a fully fleshed out product yet. But if he didn't fail and send out those sort of V1 units early on, and he didn't get that feedback that like, hey, like my wife thinks this is ugly, or, it's not really working as advertised from a connectivity perspective. All those pieces of feedback. He said if we didn't fail, Ring wouldn't be what it is today. And so he was so thankful and grateful for the feedback. It's just also a great, like you can always think things, but when you have a story like that to illustrate, like, yeah, like I have Ring cameras around the perimeter of my entire house,
Yeah.
and ours are probably dated at this point. They still function fine, but I'm sure they're still iterating. He's still got his email address on the box, right?
He does.
Um, yeah, so I imagine like do you think of that even, when the Echo came out or Alexa, that was something, it's almost like a category of itself at the time. Like the thing did, my kids were young and they were speaking to it, like it just didn't exist when we were
Correct.
growing up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just curious, like, how do you think of that, in terms of like actually learning from failure versus sort of sweeping it under the rug like most organizations do?
Yeah. I mean, it's building quickly, scaling, but continuing to invent is just, it's part of what keeps products successful. We've gone through this really big transformation with Alexa Plus, bringing generative AI to the Alexa experience and re-architecting the whole thing. It's sort of like, well, we've come 10 years. What should we do? Let's bet it all again, is sort of the approach that we're taking. And the experience is just wildly better. You can talk just like we're talking, and customers are using it, two to three times more. Like all such signs are exactly what we would hope for, but it doesn't mean it's been, a completely smooth road. There's been plenty of moments where something hasn't worked, or we failed along the path. The key is moving on quickly, dust yourself off. It never feels, although we would love this, you'd love to be celebrating the failures as they're happening. That's not at all what happens. You're not like, great, it didn't work. I think I do love, the rocket companies have made a habit of when one blows up, they cheer, but no one actually, I think everyone's just gotten that instruction. No one actually feels that way. We went through one with the new Alexa experience just to highlight maybe one bump along the road. We the first experiment we did, we shipped something called Let's Chat. This is maybe winter of 2004 or something like that, a couple years ago. Uh, and you had to talk to Alexa in two different ways to get two different kinds of experience. We thought maybe we could kind of start building alongside the original Alexa experience, which was much more transactional, much, understood much less, didn't understand that, you had to speak what we called Alexa speak. You sort of encoded your speech, you'd get something more predictable back. You couldn't speak the way we're speaking now. We built something sort of put on the side, a sidecar, so to speak, and you'd say, Alexa, let's chat. And then you'd go into a much
Hmm.
more free-flowing chat conversation, but then you couldn't get everything done. You couldn't necessarily play the music or do the smart home actions. You'd have to go back out of let's chat and speak this other way. And so, uh, in retrospect, unsurprisingly, although you never know this about an experiment beforehand, it didn't work at all. Like customers didn't like it. They didn't stick to it. They never used it again. It was just a total fail. We had to pull it back. Um, just didn't work. In retrospect, of course, makes total sense. Like you can't bolt something on. I won't name any competitors. I'm not here to take any swipes, but there are major global scale technology companies that have that experience today in customer homes. I'm positive it's not working. Uh, so you need to learn quickly. You don't want to just leave something like that dangling out there. And I think we moved on right away. It gave us more momentum around saying, you know what, actually, we really do have to bet it all. We just have to completely re-architect the whole thing. We're not going to be able to build this new experience alongside the old.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great example. You mentioned working with Jamie. Is there something about him that you admire that you think other people should also learn from?
Well, I think, Jamie and I have an awesome productive relationship together. Ring and Alexa work really well together. So there's moments where we get to build together. But I think Jamie's unvarnished with what his position is on something or what he sees as the truth in a given situation. And I love, that is straight out of startup land. You don't have time to, you know, polish the message exactly. You just, hey, here's what we have to debate. Here's the truth of the matter. We see this the same. Let's roll, or we don't. Let's let's argue. And I think I get a ton done with Jamie because we both come from that startup culture, and I find it super effective, and it's great to work with him.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Definitely his. I listened to his. I had the book as well, but I listened to the story, his memoir, so to speak, on Audible.
Yeah,
It's you get to hear like the tonality and then the just everything is so much better when someone's telling their own story over audio. Because you
100%.
feel like you're there, so it's great.
100%. And his entrepreneurial spirit comes through in the Audible version for sure.
Yeah, I just remember the times he's like, I sent that email, I used this cuss word, and I regretted it. Just like it's like he never changed through that process, which is also the cool part.
100%.
Um, what would you say? I don't know if you've interacted and worked with Jeff Bezos closely, but like when you think of from the lens of like what we should learn, maybe from a career perspective of the engagement or even observation you've had about him, what is like one or two things that stand out?
I mean, Jeff, in my experience with him, and not long or frequent, but in the moments where we had something consequential, where we really needed Jeff to weigh in, uh, boy, he took it so seriously. And that it really made an impression on me from like the first few meetings I ever took with him, because when you think about how big that job is, it's big. The CEO job, look, take any of the Fortune 100 or however you want to talk about big, hard CEO jobs. They're all hard. They're all harder than any of us knows from the outside. But the diversity of what's going on at Amazon is so broad. I couldn't name another CEO who would be like, you know what? We're just starting to win in retail. We should definitely build AWS. Like so many CEOs would have said, you know what? We definitely should stick to our knitting. Maybe 99 out of 100 Fortune 100 CEOs, frankly, from the few other ones I know. Um, Venturing out and really being governed by the idea that if you can invent something useful, deeply differentiated, that you have every reason to believe could be successful and you should go for it, uh, that created this incredibly broad set of concerns at the company, including the one that I joined for, right? Working on Kindle, trying to build a consumer electronics division that we now know as devices and services, a big part of the company story. But also, we have a huge media streaming business, and getting into media and original content is wildly different from, being in stock in diapers in Tokyo and in, building, foundational technology that the internet runs on. So these are just very, very different companies, really, within a company. Jeff would take each decision, each team coming to him as, the most important thing happening right then, and just take it so seriously and add so much to the conversation. I don't know if you know, but we have this position, used to be called sort of the shadow or technical associate. But I've known a number of folks who've been Jeff's TA, and they talk about this too, how, the context switching and the ability to add value and really focus in on something consequential for whoever was in the room. It's just 100 out of 100, like unbelievable impact
Wow.
and skill.
That's pretty amazing. I think I'm sure it's a different feeling to know that this person is completely present and
Yeah.
listening and questioning, versus maybe, I'm sure many leaders try to get in and out of a meeting as quick as possible, right? And move on to the
Yeah,
next
I
thing.
and I would say Jeff set this culture because the good news is we've got it in Andy now. And so I think having a founder like Jeff and then passing the baton to, a great leader like Andy, like we have this major continuity in leadership, including that kind of style where it's really just people bringing their best to those meetings. And it sets, I feel like for me, expectations on myself, like how I show up for my team.
Yeah. I know we were talking about um, the CEO of Boomi earlier, Steve Lucas, and it reminds me of this conversation. But one of the things he said to me is that he was talking. So he was leading some division at SAP, working for Bill McDermott, who was the CEO of SAP at the time, and he said to Bill, like, how can I be a better fit here? Like, what do I need to do? And he said, Bill just stopped him and said, you be you, right? And he just felt like it gave him permission to be himself and his authentic self at work.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the leaders, people you've reported to, the company culture has allowed you to just be yourself, which I think is one of the hardest things to do professionally.
It is, yeah. But I think it helps you, I think back to something we talked about before. I think showing up as yourself helps you be just more human and more relatable, and just better to your team and for your team, a better resource for your team when things aren't going well or when they are going well.
How many people do you technically oversee at this point?
I think my official answer would be thousands, something like that.
What would you say is the most difficult job or the most difficult part of the job that you have now? Um, I imagine it's that balance, but making sure that everyone is doing okay and all those things. Is that the hardest part, or is it like the technical part and strategy?
I mean, there's plenty on tech and strategy for sure. The thing I think about most, I would say these days, in terms of making sure we're doing enough, is just uh, disrupting ourselves and inventing, even as we're achieving, you know, huge global scale. We're, hundreds of millions of customers, using an Alexa Plus experience that's changing everything about what's going, great with Alexa. So 2 to 3 times usage, much deeper usage in things that we thought couldn't get bigger. So like music, we're sort of quietly the largest speaker manufacturer on the planet for, I don't know, a decade or something. So we stream so much music. You wouldn't think it could get much bigger. With Alexa Plus, it's 31% more. Customers stream 31% more time. Not because they have 31% more time, because it's just easier to find and it's elegant, et cetera. And those are big scale problems. It's like, how do you support billions and billions and billions of hours of streaming? You work on metrics and you grind away to get the error rates down, and you have teams that are focused on, parts of that stack and really operating at scale. And Amazon's culture, we have a huge culture of scale. We deliver zillions of packages. There's many things that operate at very large scale, but you also need to have parts of your organization who are just tearing the cover off the ball, a few brilliant engineers and a product person inventing. And that's like a handful of people, in a room with old pizza boxes and acting just like the startup where I started my career.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the hardest parts of where we are at a moment, especially in generative AI, is we all do aspire to scale. And we've achieved it with Alexa Plus, but we also need to keep inventing as fast as anybody out there, to be differentiated and just be doing more for customers. So that's probably the biggest balance, and it oftentimes means disrupting ourselves. I told you that anecdote about the Let's Chat experience and realizing we just had to re-architect the whole thing. Well, we're on our, I don't know how many times through our architecture now, and continuously changing what models power Alexa, and being honest with ourselves when we can change something for the better and tearing something down and rebuilding it. So that's the balance of those two things, I think, is the trick of the job right now for me.
Yeah. What I hear from you is like, let's not fall into the complacency trap. Yes, things are good, we're successful, but most companies, I used to work at BlackBerry a different lifetime ago. Like that to me is the example of, um, the Canadians used to use the skating to the puck analogy. We're like,
Yeah.
where is the puck?
Yeah.
I don't see it, but it could breed success could breed complacency,
Yeah. I mean, I
right?
think it's the trap of becoming an incumbent too. Like you mentioned it,
Yes.
Alexa started a category. And for all intents and purposes, is the category, but you can't get trapped by that. And you can't lean backwards. You have to keep leaning forwards, and you don't wait for someone else to disrupt you. That will for sure happen. So disrupt yourself first. I think that's the key. We love being, I love we have over 700 million, or nearly 700 million, let me correct myself, devices sold, I think, at this stage. And um, that's great, but you can't get stuck behind that.
I was talking to James Clear once and I said, you've sold 20 million books. How do you not just of Atomic Habits? How do you not just sit back and collect the royalties?
Yeah.
And now he's at 30 million. And it's just one of those things I often think about. What would you say is the hardest career decision you've had to make?
Hardest career decision I've had to make. It's probably the one coming to Amazon, which we've already talked a bit about. I think, especially being willing to take the personal risk of leaving sort of C-level startup management, which can be a whole career trajectory of its own. You get to know some funders, they'll drop you into your next thing, worst case, or you're just looking around for the next startup to engage with. Uh, but I came to Amazon as a principal within the Kindle group because I was so excited about the opportunity. Uh, and there was just so much going on in the startup land at that time, with capital drying up with the financial crisis. So that wasn't an easy road either. But I think that was probably the hardest professional decision that I've made about my career.
Do you have like 10, 15 more minutes? I just want to be mindful of time.
I think I have, let's see, let me check my calendar. I think we
Okay.
could do 10.
Okay. I can go
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
All right. What's one thing that you do for your own mental health?
I am learning yoga, of all things. I
Nice.
think it's been a long-standing bet. My wife and I are married over 25 years. I don't remember when, we bet that I wouldn't do yoga or something silly, something ridiculous. You make these statements when you're young, but it's not something I ever expected to do. It's so good for you physically. You might be standing at a standing desk.
Yeah.
People in technology sit for a living. It's very, very, it's very bad for you. And the mobility and the sense of relaxation that I get from it's super great. I recommend everyone find something like that. It's probably not yoga for everyone. I didn't think it was
Yeah.
for me, but I think some way of disconnecting, an exercise regimen, meditation, something. If you don't have something, be trying the next thing to find the something
Yeah.
that's just completely different from uh, what you're doing, 5, 6, 7 days a week, working hard.
What's the secret to being married 25 years?
Well, I mean, I am wildly in love with my wife. So I think that I don't know how to recommend someone find that, but I know it was about being sure about that and then pursuing that. Um, and then just, transparency, honesty, all the things that you'd expect, integrity, empathy, uh, but follow your heart. I think that's what matters.
Fast forward 25 years from now, what do you hope your kids say about you as a dad?
That I was a mensch. I'm a good person, a good guy, someone they can call and count on and picks them up from the airport. Uh, that kind of thing. It's kind of all that matters to me at the end, to be honest. So
Yeah, that you were present, that sounds like.
I think so. Yeah.
What's the best career advice you ever got?
Best career advice I ever got. I honestly can't remember who I got it from, but I know it's the career advice that I offer the most. So I remember getting it from someone, I just don't know who. It was early in my career. It was sort of, hey, the best way to grow is to crush what you're doing, which is sounds both like a truism and obvious, but also you often get very different advice. You need to network more. You need to be always on the lookout. Watch for where the boss is watching. Watch for where the big boss is watching. You know, be willing to move around, et cetera, et cetera. You rarely get, or I think I only ever got once, the notion that to really grow, just literally destroy what you're doing. Put your head down, crush it, learn from it, and then pick your head up.
How do you think about career success and like family sacrifice? I'm sure even for your current job, you're not always in Seattle. Well, I'm sure when the kids were younger, there's times where you're working late. How do what advice would you give somebody? How do you think about that balance?
Yeah, it's one of the questions I get most from my team or when I'm doing like an all hands or a fireside chat or something, or how did you pull this off kind of thing. I think a lot of people get it because it's these jobs are demanding and jobs in tech are demanding. Um, I often just recommend people have a few basic parameters and then know that it's up to them to set them and keep them. My rule, for example, when my kids were young, it's not true anymore now that they have their own phones, but was I wouldn't check email in front of my kids. Super basic rule. And sometimes they'd be like, "Why is dad in the bathroom again?" But I just wouldn't pull out my phone, not when my kids were in the room. And it just helped me be, some people's brains work different than mine. I just couldn't be there and in both places when my kids were young. And so that was just a simple rule. Again, didn't have it forever because I don't have it now. My kids probably check their phone more than I do when we're together, and sometimes we put them away by agreement. But to me, it's about having a few simple parameters that help you set some sort of borderline, and it can flex. It's not sort of like, oh, we need to draw some hard cut line, but things like that I think help.
Yeah, that's great. My kids also question why I'm in the bathroom sometimes. Is dad on eBay? Uh, so that's awesome. Somebody posted on LinkedIn. He was like a successful startup of a security. So it was a security startup that I think he sold. But he posed that question on LinkedIn about like, what do you do to? And there's a book behind me. It's called How to Break Up with Your Phone, which I thought
Mm,
had some great advice in there as well. Um, but for me, the thing that's worked the best is actually leaving the phone in my car. So it's like inaccessible.
lock it away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that same concept. Because
100%.
even if I put it by the front door, then I like casually go there and look at it.
Yeah.
Um, okay. If someone asks you, hey, what advice do you have for me applying at Amazon or like a very big company like a Google? What's the sort of, I'm sure you get this all the time. And I think it's also, kind of a unique job market with everything going on. But what's sort of the one piece of advice you give people?
I would say, find the way that your application or resume is going to stand out, right? So just it's an ocean, right? That people know that they're trying to navigate through. So leaning in, making it honestly comprehensible, simplify what's the one or two things someone's going to remember. It really does work that way. If you can get it on the one page, get it on the one page, make it memorable, carve away the detail. Those are the basic things in the application process. But I do think also, in this age of AI, like just get yourself up to date, go experiment with things, learn how the next version of the jobs we're working on are changing and transforming. That's probably the most important thing. I'm a incredible optimist about the age of AI. I work on generative AI product all day, every day in Alexa, and super proud of what we've built. And I think it's super transformative. I also think AI is going to transform every job. It's not going to make most of the jobs go away. I definitely don't believe that, but it is going to change every job. And so being front-footed about that is probably, this is, you know, my kids, they feel like they've heard this mantra too many times now going off to college, but I'm a big optimist about AI and think it should just be built into what people are doing, including
Yeah.
school, by the way, and including just coming out of school. That's that makes you a very attractive candidate, someone who understands how to change the job from the inside.
I love that. Um, is there a book or two that have made a big impact on you that you recommend other people read?
Uh, Crime and Punishment, 100 Years of Solitude, uh, Unbearable Lightness of Being. I'm listing my favorite works of fiction. Before yoga, I just think great literature has always been a way for me to get outside my head and separate and learn about the human condition. Uh,
What is Crime and Punishment about?
Crime and Punishment is about a famous crime. It's Dostoevsky, so it's a famous work of Russian literature, and it's one of the first existentialist novels. I'm not going to give it away, actually.
Okay,
No spoilers, no spoilers.
interesting.
But put it on your list. It's not the Brothers Karamazov or Anna Karenina. It's not 1,000 pages.
Mm,
It's a nice long work of Russian literature, though, and it's probably my favorite book, I think.
okay, interesting. I'll check that out. Okay, you're talking to somebody early on in their career. I know you've alluded to some of this, but what are two or three pieces of general life slash career advice that you would give someone who wants to make an impact in this world?
Make sure you find like-minded people to work with. Not everybody is, or not every company culture is. We talked about this a bit, sort of like finding alignment in where you're looking and what you're looking for. If you really want to have a big impact and build or invent or drive change, then you have to find a place that wants to do that because decisions will be based around that kind of guiding light. Um, and then I would say trust your gut and make sure you're having fun. Um, I do meet young people that sort of started in one direction and then pivot back. Oh, I thought I wanted to do investment banking and then I made a change, and that's fine. That's just a little bit later signal from their gut, and they realized it later. You can also just make sure you're paying attention up front. So that's what I recommend. Your gut's probably right about what you're going to love doing, and you can trust it
I love that. And then you said disrupt yourself first. I think that's great advice as well.
for sure. Always want to be first. It's going to happen either way.
Yeah. Daniel, this was awesome. I appreciate you leaning into this. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, I made it. It's good to hang out with you today.
All right. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. See ya.